Welcome to Chapter 9, Physical Security and Access Control. Physical security is often the branch of security most overlooked by cybersecurity professionals. Organizations that are diligent about creating strong passwords and monitoring their firewalls and intrusion detection systems aren't always as thorough with physical facilities. So we're going to look at ways to protect these facilities. So what we're talking about is actually someone getting into our computer room. So we're going to review this, see how what we should have, guards and key cards and keypads to keep people out of our server room. And that's what we want to look at. How secure is our physical security? Do we have cameras and all that? So what is physical security compromise? How to design a comprehensive physical security plan. The psychology and behavior biometrics access controls, how to use technology for access control, pros and cons of outsourcing physical securities, best practices for securities. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. So what is the physical security? It goes back even before we had computers. You lock your door at night, don't you? Well, this is the same concept. If we lock our doors, we lock our cars, well, we should lock our buildings. Make sure who's there, fences, making sure we put all this in. So this is what we're going to look at. So a good physical security strategy is designed in layers. This ensures that if an intruder bypasses or breaks through one layer, they have another layer that they have to go through. So it's not just one thing. So first, we want to look at our perimeter. What restrictions do we have on the outside of our building? If you think of a military base or corporate campus, they have a fence up, they have guards walking around most likely, they have cameras, they have landscaping design so people can't hide behind it. Usually it's an open field of maybe 50 to 80 feet. With nothing there, so people can be seen, they can't hide. We don't have a lot of bushes. We don't have obstructions, so we want a nice clean view of what's going on. Lighting, we're going to make sure we have plenty of lighting so people can see what's happening. Possibly even motion sensors. I know one of the things we have at my house, if you walk around my house at night, every time you leave a zone, motion lights turn on. That's basically because my daughter's afraid of the dark, but that's okay. But we put that kind of lighting system up. Maybe you're going to have security guards. These are some of the things that you want to consider having a perimeter. Who has access to the building? Is the building locked at night? What time does the door open? Where I used to work, you couldn't get in the building without a special card before 6 a.m. And after 11. Again, other than between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., if you weren't on an approved list, you weren't allowed in the building. So these are some of the things that you can do, is make sure that certain people can't get into your building, into your floors, if they're not during normal working hours. So you can actually lock that down. How many points of entry do you have? If you have an elevator, does it go to the basement? Do you have to have a key activated to use the basement, or a card or something on that order to get into one of the floors? So these are some of the things we want to look at as we're going along. If you're in a high traffic area, you might want to put up bollards, or you see the walls that go up to prevent cars from getting through. So these show some things that you can do if you're security guards to prevent cars from getting into the thing. Non-sensitive work areas. Do you have a common area, maybe a lobby? You let people in there, but you don't let them pass that. You're either going to have that as an on guard, maybe security cards, and not only that, but you want to train your people not to let people in. Like if you're walking in, you don't hold the door for someone. I know it might sound rude, but these are some of the things that we need to do. Government facilities are a lot stricter. And if you look on page 185, you can see the different levels and the number of people that they have that we have to take into account. And especially the computer room. That should only be people who are going to be working on computers. It shouldn't be everyone in your IT department. A programmer has no reason to get in there. They're doing all the work remotely now anyway. But who has to touch the servers? And one of the companies I worked at, T-Mobile, my boss didn't have access to the server room because he was never going to touch the server. I had access because I was doing programming and I had to get into a server room, but my boss would never have access. So these are some of the different things that only give access to who needs it. Limit that. And this way, the less people have access to it, the less likely something's going to happen. Now, we've spoken about biometrics. We have what you know, what you have, and what you are. So a password is something you know. Well, we might have to have that. What you have, a smart card. So if you're going to have a sensitive room, and I know I've seen videos and a Facebook sensitive, you have to have a password to get in, you have to have your card to get in, and you have to have biometrics. And super sensitive areas, these are not uncommon. And they help protect the data, they help protect the room, they help protect everything going on. So you're going to use possibly biometrics to get into the server room, where you got to put your badge and the eye scanning or your fingerprint. How it basically works, you got to enroll, and then you have the verification. And then this way you can make sure that it gets there. Let's see. You can have hand geometry, facial recognition, behavior, how fast I'm typing, my signature analysis, voice recognition. These are all different versions of biometrics that we can use. And depending on the level of security you want, this is what will work for you. Obviously, we always have to worry about false acceptance rates and false rejection rates. So the false acceptance, that imposter will be recognized. That's a type 2 error. False rejection is that the legitimate person's rejected. That's a type 1. Now, if a type 1 is rejected, chances are they can just re-log in, resubmit it, they'll get in unless there's a problem with their login. But these are some of the things that we want to look at. So how it comes together. Now, there might be some legal issues that we need to make sure we don't violate. Privacy is a significant concern in biometric access, so we have to make sure we keep everything secure and we're not violating anyone's legal rights. We got to look at the cost effectiveness of it. Obviously, having an iris scan is a lot more costly than just having a keypad. So does it make sense to have that type of protection? These are some of the things that we want to keep reviewing as we go along. Now, obviously, the easiest thing to do, how do we lock our building? Locks, padlocks, warded locks they're called. It's the simplest mechanism. You put it on and we don't have to worry about it. It has a locking chamber, has the grooves. It's your typical key lock. Tumbler locks are sophisticated, a little more sophisticated, and they have a series of spring-loaded tumblers. Combination locks. Cipher locks, a programmable lock that helps us prevent anything happening. We also have the electronic key management system. In facilities with a large number of physical keys, keeping those keys can be difficult. So electronic key management are locked boxes designed and controlled who have access to the keys and keep the records. So these are one thing we can do. We also have fobs and tokens that we've talked about also in the past. This helps us also, especially if you're remote, having these your fobs or tokens in, and now we have it on our phones that allow this to have it. Common access cards. Again, where I worked, that was very common. When I was at T-Mobile, one of the things that we would have, every department was in their own room. They'd have a hallway. There was no open rooms. If you wanted to go into, if I was in IT and I had to go fix someone's computer in accounting, I'd have to go in, swipe my card, it would let me in. Accounting couldn't come into IT with their card didn't work. So this also helped limited the movement of employees in large organizations. This is a great way to go also. Because not only that, but they can track where I am in the building. So they can pull up the pins, all right, Sal's over in marketing, or Sal's over in accounting, or he's in HR. I was there for I can see when I logged in, and then when I came back to my office, I logged back into the IT department. So this is a good way of also tracking employees. Now, if you're a small company, you might not have the people to do your security. So you might want to physical outsource it. So what are some benefits? Well, the biggest benefit is these are experts in the field. They can come in, give you an assessment of this is what it's going to take us to secure your building. You don't have to worry about the loopholes. You don't have to worry about any systems. You don't have to worry about maintaining systems. So having that outsource is something useful because they are experts in it. What are the risks of it? Well, you're giving up control of everything. That means a third party is controlling who has access. Now, there is always trade-off. Is it worth to have that third-party security system to do it? Are they going to do the same vetting as you would do as your company? If you have to make sure that that's going on, if they're hiring their own security guards, are you hiring security guards? These are some of the things we got to think about. And you got to weigh it out. There's no right or wrong answer. It depends on what you want to do. So what are some best practices? Depending on your organization's security needs. If your organization owns its own facility, landscaping, and perimeter security concerns, you'll have to address. If I'm renting, well, then it's the building's responsibility to at least do the perimeter of it. It will be ours to make sure that our offices are protected with locks and securities, and if we want to use biometrics, if we have an open area. So it depends if we own the building or are we renting the building. Do we document existing physical security measures, including perimeter security, access, non-standard entry points, standard access levels? For example, certain employees may have access to the data center where others don't. Different securities at special times, which I've already talked about. So, summary. No one physical security method is the answer to the organization access control needs. Many methods must work together to create a strong net of security. Perimeter security must be in place to deny an intruder access to the building. But if an intruder does get past the perimeter, there should be some other methods of access control to protect the most sensitive data. The goal of any security plan, whether implemented in-house or outsourced, is to make access convenient for authorized users and difficult for intruders. Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome. Chapter 10, Access Control Solutions for Remote Workers. As you know, the last year, pandemic, everyone was working from home. How did companies ensure that their workers were who they said they are? So this is what we're going to be covering this week, working from home, allowing employees to work remotely. When this book was written last year, before all this happened, they couldn't have seen this coming. But everyone now has been working remotely. We're slowly going back. So it's a privilege. Now it's a necessity. So how do we, as a company, how do I make sure that whoever's logged in is who they say they are, that any data that we have sent out across the network is secure? And that's what we're going to look at. So allowing employees to work remotely is a benefit that organizations offer. If your organization provides remote access for employees, that means aspects of your network are remote as well. The corporate network now extends to employees' homes, coffee shops, airports, remote locations. Extending the network introduces new security concerns with the evolution of virtual private networks, Wireless network capabilities, network security, and solutions have changed to meet demands. So we're going to look at this. The chapter covers how mobile workforce has grown in recent years, which remote access methods and techniques are commonly used, which remote access protocols are strong protection, remote authentication, network authentication, VPNs, web, and best practices. So let's take a look at what we're going to be reviewing this week. So, the rapid growth in consumer and business technologies. Again, the last decade, our network has grown. High-speed Wi-Fi is available, cable Wi-Fi, Fios. Because of all this, we now have the infrastructure to work from home. A decade ago, we could never have achieved what we did this past year with the virus. So now we have the capabilities. Now, how do we protect everything? So we have, almost everyone has a laptop. When I travel, I bring my laptop with me. I can log in from anywhere in the world. A couple of years ago, I was in France on a vacation and I had some work to do. Turned my laptop on and I was working remotely in a whole different country. So this is the beauty of having this. But how do we secure it? How do we make sure that we have protection? Will the network access be granted to only employees and resort computers that we know, company-only employees, or can they use their personal? We talked about bring your own device to work. Well, this is kind of the same thing. Are we going to allow that, or we only allow our phones? What about our smartphone and tablets? So these are some of the things that we have to look at. My wife just got a new job, and she's trying to log in from home. She needs a VPN connection. Because she doesn't have a company laptop, they won't give her access. So these are some of the rules and procedures that we need to look at and follow. So what are some of the techniques that we have that we want to look at? Whenever that happens, we want to make sure remote access connections usually remain open for the entire time. This may cause security problems, leaving connections open for 24 hours, even when they're not using it. When we use a VPN, it doesn't protect the computer system, it protects the data flowing at the time. So if the computer is hacked before they connect, well then that's going to allow them, whoever hacked that computer, it's going to get a direct line to our thing. So we need to make sure that the right antivirus softwares are installed on their computers and that they're taking precautions. Now, we still have to deal with, just as we did with the login, identification. What uniquely distinguishes that individual? Is it going to be a login, which is most common? Then we have the authentication process. Do they have access to that right? So now as Ferraro, I can access Cumberland's website. I can't do it as Sal or whatever else I try. It has to be that login and authentication, that it's on there. Then the authorization occurs when I put in my password. Allows me to have access to that system. So these are some of the things that we want to look at. Authentication, authorization, and accounting. So, there are multiple ways for organizations to provide remote access, identification, authentication, and authorization through protocols. Some of these protocols add additional components that allow us. So the authentication provides a way of proving the user's claim of identity. This is usually probably, and as you know, Cumberland's moved to this. The use of multi-factor authentication offers a variety of authentication technologies. Two-factor and three-factor authentications help us to make sure that it is. So it's not just your user ID and password, but it's also a PIN or token or biometrics. Authorization is determining whether a user has the right to certain actions. These actions may include commands of accessing internal resources. Authorizations cannot be that. And accounting enables the system to collect statistics on the network of the users for auditing and billing purposes. Accounting enables tracking the system's usage, start and stop times, what data packets were sent. So this allows us to have that extra layer of security. So, remote authentication dial-in user service, or RADIUS. This is a client-server protocol that provides authentication and authorization for remote users. RADIUSes also provide accounting capabilities. So there's a couple that are available. So RADIUS is a network protocol that provides communication between a network server, access server or NAS, and the authentication servers. Enterprise use protocols to provide network authentication for their users, internet service providers. So the internet, if you're working from home, you go through the remote access server, and then that will connect to the actual server. The RADIUS server kind of keeps everything separate until it's connected. And the RADIUS server can manage large numbers of users through a single source. So this allows us to have that. Logins and passwords. There's also a lightweight directory access protocol, which is the verification. So the RADIUS protocol works with the users provide authentication credentials such as an ID and password to the RADIUS server, NAS or VPN. The RADIUS client creates the access request and allows it. The access request is sent to the RADIUS. If no response is returned, the request is sent back. So this is kind of what it does. A shared secret in the case-sensitive text writing and validate communications between RADIUS and clients. So that's something to keep in mind. Then we have a remote access server, or RAS. This provides authentication for remote access to the internet and dial-up scenario. A user connects to the NAS with his or her credentials and compared with those stored in a database. If the credentials match, authentication has occurred, and the user is granted access to the network. Users and systems use remote access for gaining access to the system. It's necessary to implement strong security when using a RAS. Then we have terminal access control systems. It's a client-server protocol that was developed to control who can use dial-up lines. While we no longer use dial-up lines, it's a widespread technology, and successors live on many network applications. Terminal access control systems is a Cisco proprietary protocol developed to provide access control for routers, networks, access servers, and network devices via one of more centralized thing. Again, we have authentication, authorization, and accounting is built into that. The difference between RADIUS and Tactics, both provide the AAA capability. It is important to understand how the two approaches differ. Assuring the best protocols is provided for the best system. Remote access protocols. Password Authentication Protocol, PAP, is a data link protocol that provides authentication point-to-point protocol. Allows the internet connection to occur over phone lines. Transmission of TCP/IP traffic over telephone lines is available through PPP. PAP provides identification or authentication of users when using remote servers. Network authentication protocols. Modem network basically requires the authentication before gaining access for both wired and wireless. 802.1x. Protocols provide framework for implementing that. The supplicant is the software running on the client that wishes to connect to the network. The authenticator is the network device that the client wishes to connect to, typically an Ethernet switch or a wireless point access. The authentication server is a server that validates requests for network access. Extendable Authentication Protocol, EAP, is a framework that enables multiple authentication mechanisms over a wireless network. The VPN, Virtual Private Network. A VPN are ways for remote access, and probably one of the most common, access for employees to gain secure access to the corporate network. A VPN is a secure connection over unsecure networks, the internet. Communication security over VPN is provided through encryption. VPNs can also be used for secure communication between two network devices. A connection, VPN software. A VPN establishes a private network over the public network, such as the internet, instead of dialing it over the telephone lines. A VPN uses an internet connection that the system has already established, as previously discussed. So it uses we're going to look at a couple different types. Transport layer security is the modem standard for VPN. This protocol has the advantage of working on almost every network it's being allowed. Point-to-point tunneling was developed by a group of vendors and standardized in 1999, and allows tunneling over the IP network. And encapsulates the packets so they can't be read. A security association, internal key exchange. These are some of the other things that we could be looking at. Web authentication. Web authentication is ensuring users are who they say they are through web applications. Web authentication is needed in situations where virtual private networks is not available. This may occur if a user has the secondary system, such as customer computer. Usually an ID and authentication is required, maybe a one-time password. And then we also have knowledge-based authentication. Identification of web mechanism used in real time as a question and answer process. These questions and answers are obtained from public records or private data warehousing, such as credit bureaus. These questions consist of information of what is the license plate of your 1988 Toyota Camry and so on. These are personal things that no one would have access to. Best practices for remote access. Determine the security risk associated with remote. Everything comes at a risk. Is it worth having our employees work from home? Obviously, this last year, yes. Select a remote access option that addresses security needs. And we do have to keep the price and availability of what we have. Determining appropriate level of authentication based on security risk. We want to ensure that the systems that are accessing a network meet the security policies and organizations. Ensure protection of the system that remote workers access. So, summary, this chapter focused on technologies and securities considerations of remote access solutions. There are many security risks associated with these implementations, which can be addressed with the right protocols and access controls. Employing a AAA framework can help ensure a network is configured to support and choose chosen protocols appropriately. Using these capabilities will create access control solutions to make an organization more secure and productive for all workers. The appropriate solution, such as a radius, depends on the risk associated within the environment. You must identify the needs and requirements of your organization and compare them against available protocols to choose the best solution for you. Thank you.